Welcome back to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoating.
Sam and Doug work on completing the rear end of the Alpha 1 GTO. The new stub axles have been machined to work with the new beefier suspension parts. They also elected to go with 300ZX drive axles to hold up to the extra power this GTO will be making.
Doug and I are at the point where we're going to be doing the final assembly of our rear end of the GTO project. And the first time that we put this thing together, we had the stub axles were a little damaged, but we had to keep them in place to keep this car rolling when it went to the body shop.
Right.
So we kind of put this together. Now we've got the real stub axles, and you took them to your shop and you grinded the edges. Tell them why.
Yeah, and really what we want to do is we turn the edges on here, and guys, it's real important that you have a great relationship with a machine shop, because when you get parts in, they're not always going to fit exactly the way you think they're going to fit, so we had to modify it, and it's real important. We put it on a lathe, we turned it. The last thing we want is the stub axle to be out of balance, so if you're spinning it, moving at a high rate of speed, you don't want the tires and stuff to be shaking. And so it's important. And the other thing is as we put everything together, we made sure we used lots of anti-seize, because we knew it was a mock-up, and then we wanted easy when we went ahead and took it back apart.
So now all I gotta do is transfer over the new bearings that we installed last time onto the new stub axles that we're gonna be using this time, and then we're gonna go in with our modified flanges, because we are gonna be using a twin turbo 300ZX drive axle in the rears. So this stub axle has got a modification flange that you had welded onto this.
Yeah. What we had to do is we had to remachine stuff. We had to go weld it, make everything solid. Once again, keep everything in balance. These are real important little items that you have to do. That machine shop's real important for you.
So we got our new stub axles in place. We got the bearings transferred over. I'm gonna put in my spacer. And this is basically gonna sandwich the two bearings inside the knuckle, keeping them from going to each other, right?
Right.
It's gonna keep them separated.
Yeah.
Then we're gonna install the new flange that Doug had welded onto the flange that's gonna actually hold the axles in place. We're gonna put that right there on top. Once we put it in the knuckle, then we're gonna bolt our axles to it. Anytime you guys are doing assembly work, please pay attention. On the axle itself, we have a groove, and then we have a corresponding recess on the flange. It's very important. These two fit very tight together. Draw your bolts in slowly, making sure that all this gap around the two flanges are gone. And then the hardware, you got a bolt and you got a nut. You have to make sure that you put the bolt in through the face of the flange, because once you come around here, had I had the bolt going this way, I would have hit the knuckle. So it's very important that you guys pay attention when installing the hardware as to which way you got to install that hardware.
Yeah, you don't want to go ahead and use an air tool on this or an electric tool on it. It's a lot of feel to it, because if it's binding anywhere, you've got to be able to feel it, back it off. So take your time in doing it. Draw one side a little bit, draw the other side. Take your time as you're doing it.
I'm installing the 1-inch spacer that I got on this hub right here, and the reason for that is because the old school Dayton wheels don't clear the Willwood brakes and e-brake. So I've got a 1-inch thick billet bolt-on spacer keeping me safe.
Sam, this rear suspension looks absolutely wonderful. You know, it was a little bit of work, you know, beefing everything up, having everything done out of the aluminum. It's lightweight, but extremely strong. It just looks beautiful. We just have a little more work to put the sway bar in, to put the differential oil in, but it's looking great.
Absolutely, I do agree. It's going to work out really nice. The only thing I do have to do is we're going to have to relocate the e-brake cable and the brake hoses, because as you can see, with the axles in place, we've got a little bit of interference there.
Yeah.
And when it comes to filling with the differential, guys, we just installed an LSD in this car. Depending on whether you use a clutch style or a torsion style LSD, you want to pay attention to the fluid you install. And then depending on the climate you're in, if you're in a colder climate, you want to use a thinner viscosity. If you're in a warmer climate, you can use a thicker viscosity, but the more viscosity, the more resistance and drag you're going to have.
Absolutely, and those are great tips, Sam.